Hey everyone, in this week's episode, I'm going to shed some light on how to become a psychologist in Australia if you didn't study psychology during your undergrad or if you didn't get accepted into an honours program. It is possible, and personally, I don't think it's ever too late to go into psychology. I actually had a professor share with us in a lecture once that he didn't get into psychology until he was in his 50s, so that's an example. Never too late. So in this video, I'm going to start off by explaining how to get into psychology. Then we'll do a deep dive into the application process for university. And as we go through this, I'm going to flag what I think is important to be aware of as you go through the process. Okay, so first up, how to get into psychology if you didn't do it during your undergrad. Let's take a look at the Australian Psychological Society's roadmap. They have the traditional pathway, which is a 3-year undergrad majoring in psychology and then doing your 1-year honours. Then they also have this vague sounding pathway, the 4 sequence, which is essentially the alternative pathway if you didn't study psychology during your undergrad. It's comprised of doing a graduate diploma, which is the equivalent of a bachelor's, also known as level 1, and then an advanced graduate diploma, which is the equivalent of honours and also known as level 2. So a quick tip for psychology students who didn't get into an honours program, you can always try out for an advanced grad dip. And then the final step for all students is to go on and do your master's, which is the equivalent of level 3 to get your registration as a psychologist. So if you don't have a background in psychology but you want to get into it, then you can apply for the grad dip, and all you'll need is a bachelor's degree with relatively high marks. On average, this pathway will take about 2 years of full-time study, which is half the amount of time of the traditional pathway. A lot of universities in Australia do offer the graduate diploma pathway, so you've got a lot of scope to pick where you want to go, whether you want to do it online or on campus. If it's possible for you though, and this is just my opinion, I don't have any evidence to back this up, but I would recommend trying to go to a university that has a really good reputation in psychology. My reasoning for this is because getting into a master's program down the track is very competitive for everyone who applies, and you'll be up against candidates that have gone down the traditional pathway, meaning they may have an edge on you, but it's really hard to say. It does vary greatly between universities. Obviously, there's also a lot of other factors that influence candidates getting into a master's program, like work experience and personal attributes. So go with the university that feels like the best fit for you. All right, now let's do a deep dive into the university that is currently ranking #1 in psychology at the moment as of 2023, and that is the University of Melbourne. Okay, so as you can see, it's 1 year full-time study. Its intake is 3 times during the year. And it's also available to international students, meaning, if you're coming from overseas and you want to transition into psychology, this is an option for you. Let's take a little look at the workload as well, just so that we can start to get a bit of an idea of what it's like. So if we check out what will I study, you can see that the course has 8 compulsory units and 2 electives. So this is quite an intensive study load condensed into 1 year. Something that I will point out here is to remember that psychology is a very competitive field. A lot of people going into psychology don't realize how much emphasis is put on academia and getting high grades. And the reason for this is because psychologists are scientist practitioners. Everything that we do is underpinned by evidence-based research, and this is what sets our field apart from, say, counseling. So it's really important during your graduate diploma to show that you can get high grades and that you will make a good researcher in order to get into a master's program down the track. All right, so now let's have a quick look at the entry requirements for the grad dip. We can see that applicants need to have done an undergraduate degree with a major other than psychology. So it doesn't matter what discipline, as long as it's not psychology. And then we can see the selection committee will also consider things like prior academic performance. So it's important that you did get good grades for your undergrad. So those are the main things to keep in mind, which gives you a good little snapshot. Okay, so the next step after you've completed a graduate diploma in psychology is to then go on and complete an advanced graduate diploma. So if we circle back to the University of Melbourne to look at their advanced graduate diploma, they offer an excellent program. So again, 1 year full-time, Available to domestic and international students. The difference with the advanced grad dip though is intake is only once a year in February. I would gauge that getting into this program would be more competitive than getting into the graduate diploma because you're competing against students that have also potentially done a 3-year undergrad in psychology. And look, they even spell it out down below. Entry is highly competitive. The total places they have in the program is 100, which is actually pretty good for an honors/graduate diploma program. Just eyeballing this as well, it looks like the University of Melbourne treats their advanced graduate diploma in psychology on par with honors, which they should, but it also speaks to how competitive it is to get into. My hot tip for students doing the advanced graduate diploma would be to make sure it's your main priority, your main focus for that 1 year or the couple of years that you do it. Try your best to minimize external stresses, work less if you can, because this is your most important year in psychology. An honors program or the equivalent, the advanced grad dip, for all students, this year is crunch time. You want to make sure that you perform really, really well. And the reason for this is because getting into a master's program in psychology is really, really competitive. Often universities only have 25 to 15 spots available to students. I'm not trying to say it's impossible though, you definitely have a shot as long as you're aiming to get really high grades. You want to be aiming to get a high distinction average. At the very least, a distinction average, but really it's gonna help you out in the long run if you can try and get the high distinction average. So the stakes are high. It is pretty intimidating. The pressure's on everyone. All students feel this going into honors or an advanced grad dip. So try and reduce the stresses in your life. Make sure you can focus on this, make it your top priority. And another thing I'll say is that I actually really enjoyed my honors year, even though it was stressful and there was a lot of pressure. I loved doing my own research and it was nice working with a small cohort of students. So don't let it scare you, just go into it prepared, knowing that you're going to have to work really hard. Okay, so as we start to finish up this video, I'm going to give you a couple more tips. But before we keep going, I just want to also say that psychology is an amazing field to get into. I absolutely love my job. I work in therapy, but there are so many different areas in psychology itself that you can go into. It's a really, really rewarding career path. So as you explore your options for graduate diplomas, I would encourage you to read the handbooks and even call someone up and talk to them. Make sure that this pathway can get you into a master's down the track. And also remember that to some extent, it's never too late to get into psychology. My mum works as a clinical psychologist and she didn't start studying until she was 39. And if you want more tips about getting into psychology, or if you want to know what it's like actually working in the field, check out my YouTube channel. I've got lots of videos and resources there, so definitely go and check it out. All right, I hope that this video was helpful to you and I will talk to you in another one. Have an amazing week. Okay, bye.